Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to say that Road to Cheltenham is back with you. Ruby Walsh is alongside me, and we're heading full throttle towards the Cheltenham Festival. And we have a different kind of show coming up for you. But first, Ruby, some important news. It was announced by Cheltenham and also by Sky Bet that the opening race of the 2025 Cheltenham Festival will be named the Michael O'Sullivan Supreme Novices Hurdle. It is, Ruby, the most fitting way to remember and celebrate a talent that we lost, sadly, tragically so young. Yeah,
tragically so young, I think is the right way of describing it, Lydia. But look, a nice gesture from Sky Bet, who obviously asked the O'Sullivans, and I think once the O'Sullivans were happy that Michael should be honoured in such a way, then it's beautiful.
It is, and this, of course, that great day where he delivered a ride of such maturity, such thoughtfulness, such patience, such poise to win the 2023 Supreme Novices Hurdle on Marine Nationale.
Yeah, I actually see a ride way beyond someone who was still a conditional, Lydia, but look, that was the talent of the man, and what a great way to honour him and remember him even.
Absolutely, and of course he went on to have a double on the day with Jazzy Matty as well later on, and I think all the tributes that have been paid to him, not just a brilliant burgeoning riding talent, but remembering the human being that he is. You say that his riding talent had maturity beyond his years, but so did he as a person, I think.
He most certainly did. Look, and everything you heard about him, read about him, to meet him, talk to him, know him, look, he was a gentleman and a fun character as well. There's a bit of mischief about him too, but look, he was a great man.
Yeah, and obviously Road to Cheltenham has not been on your screens since the passing of Mike O'Sullivan, and the whole team here would like to extend their deepest, sincerest sympathies to the O'Sullivan family, and we look forward to the Supreme Novices Hurdle and see him being celebrated, his memory, in the most fitting way. So, Ruby, this show, it's going to be focused mainly on the handicaps. The weights were unveiled on Tuesday, and we have a guest alongside us shortly. But first we need to do a roundup of the news, quick, sharp, don't we?
Rapid.
Yeah, OK, let's go. We'll start with Constitution Hill. Third time a charm in terms of public gallop. On Tuesday, it all went well.
It did go well for him, which was good to see. What was it, a day out, an exercise canter? People bemoaning the fact that he has away days like this instead of races. Well, this was nothing that resembled a race. It was a canter around Kempton, a day out in the horse box, and great to see him in rude health.
The positive thing about it was, I mean, he left behind That's Nice and Aston Martini. They did a circuit and a half, and it was essentially two separate gallops, wasn't it? But it was the way in which the reception, it was clear that Nicky Henderson, Nico de Boinville and Michael Buckley were all delighted with how it had gone. And you're getting, again, it's more positive vibes from that camp.
Yeah, they are. And Nicky is getting quite bullish, so too is Nico. And, you know, once they're happy with him, everybody that's associated with him seems to be happy with him. And look, roll on Tuesday week with him. And I thought this was interesting from Nico. I don't really mind who turns up. If a two-mare turns up, it makes the mare sort of a bit easier for some of the others.
That's fighting talk, boy.
That's sticking your head above the parapet. I hope it goes well for Nico.
Yeah, absolutely. But positive vibes constantly about Constitution Hill. Now, in this division, which kind of overlaps in the way that Ruby's just suggested and Nico's just suggested with the Mayor's Hurdle, we've got quite a bit of other news for you as well. A chance to look back on the Kingwell, which was won by Golden Ace in an odd kind of way, beating Burdett Road. Yeah,
and to be fair to her, when you look, she is the only mare to have beaten Brighter Days Ahead, and Jeremy Scott has always maintained that wasn't a fluke. Good to see her back at 2 miles. I think that really suited her. Her two previous runs this season have been over further, and I thought she was game and got the better of Burdett Road. Good performance from her, but good news from the yard. yesterday or today, I think.
Today, yeah, absolutely. You can catch up with that on the website. Nick Luck did an interview with trainer Jeremy Scott. He said afterwards that the horse had pulled a muscle, Golden Ace, and that she'd take about a week, 10 days to get better, but she's worked today and everything seems to be okay and on course for Cheltenham. Clearly, it's not ideal. He's also added, and that probably explains why she hung to her right and jumped to her right and didn't travel as strongly as she can do during the races.
But it was far enough away. I mean, if she did it at Wincanton, she has the race, the fitness under her belt. Once she's happy with her today, I wouldn't consider it to be that big an issue at all. And
essentially, Jeremy is saying that he's going to go wherever the big two mares don't go. So
good call.
Yeah. So because she's got the champion hurdle entry and the mares hurdle entry, and if they both go, if Lossiemouth and Bright Today's Ahead go to the champion, we can expect her to turn up in the mares. So it's going to be a late decision. And it sounds like James Owen is leaning towards the county now with Burdett Road, the Christmas hurdle third.
Yeah, and I suppose it's the train of thought. He does have to carry the penalty from the Greatwood, and the penalty he got in the Christmas hurdle now has brought him well up in the weights in the county hurdle, but we'll get to the county in a while. Could you see him winning a champion hurdle? No. No. So he's probably running the right race all the same. Yeah, mark of 150 at the county hurdle, and the shorter price for that, as his trainer has observed. Right, we've had the Grade 3 Quivega as well, which has often been used successfully as a stepping stone towards the festival, and this time it was Grey de Grugy who won it. Yeah, Jade de Grugy making a comeback run. Gay Cool in the navy colours on the right was well fancied. A lot of joy down the inside. Mousy Brown in behind. Jade de Grugy got to the front of the second last, jumped the last well and pulled away from Mousy Brown and Gay Cool. But she gave the runner up plenty of weight, but she didn't do any more than she was entitled to do. I think both Willie and Paul felt she would improve plenty for her, and she will. She was late back into the yard, so she will come forward for that run. Look, Grade 1 winning mare last year, went to Cheltenham to take on Brighter Days Ahead. That never really happened. Golden Ace got in the way, but look, she'd be a big runner in the mare's hurdle. I fear you weren't blown away by that. No, I wasn't. No. Just getting the spidey senses of that. Black Tears, of course, went on to from winning this race to win the mares, and Annie Power, of course, won this en route to her champion hurdle success. Quivega won it, and Limini beat Apple's Jade, who then turned it round in Cheltenham. Yeah, and Queensbrook and Hispanic Moon have also run and won that and been placed in the mares hurdle. Other mares to talk about, Woodhoe and Joyeuse, and we can have a look at Woodhoe beating Joyeuse at Cheltenham in December. And the question is where these two go. The sense is that Woodhoe's now going to stay handicapping, and Joyeuse could be supplemented for the mares hurdle. She could. I mean, it's been a thought since she won the William Hill at Newbury, and I suppose a lot will depend on where the two big mares go. But having said that, I can't see much decision being made before the supplementary has to be made next Tuesday, so I think she'll have to be put in before you have an answer definite answer as to where the mares are going. Exactly right. I think Goodnight potentially expecting more of a collateral rise as a result of Joyeuse's winning the Betfair hurdle for Woodhoe, but only up 3, and so now the Mountain Pipe still seems to be the main idea. Carla Conti potentially the representative for the mares hurdle. Right, let's move to some novices. William Money finally got his head in front. Yeah, and it's not in a maiden in a novice hurdle. Sean Flanagan on board, jumped to his right very early in the race, was quite slow at the hurdle in front of the stands, but he did warm up to it. I mean, he got to the last hurdle, he actually jumped a little bit to his left, but he pulled away and won really impressively. He was a very good bumper horse last year. It was a good performance. Probably needs to be a bit more professional than that again come the Supreme, but look, I actually was just counting them before we came in. Like, you can see 16, 15, 16, maybe even 17 runners in the Supreme. I know Copeck the board will be a short price favourite, but it could be a much bigger field than we've had of late. And Barry Connell making the point that he's done lots of things wrong and yet still shown a very high level of form. A strongly run Supreme with a big field, that would probably help him. Yeah, that's what Barry's hoping anyway. And look, that was a small field race, but it was good to see him get his head in front. Meanwhile, in Britain, we have the Dovecot, and Tripoli Flyer managed to win this for Fergal O'Brien, conceding weight and giving quite a thumping to Miami Magic. Yeah, and was impressive. Miami Magic had come home really well at Aintree, hadn't he? But Tripoli Flyer kicked the last out of the ground, but kept pulling out and went away and won. I think we'll have to build on that. I think the runner-up, I thought, got a canny ride at Aintree. This is the Adonis then. Obviously, Mondo Man at the back, so free. Gave himself absolutely no chance, does he?
No, absolutely not. And it was instead Mambo number 5 coming through, and he heads to Aintree probably, even though he's got an entry in the Fred Winter. So clearly we're talking about juveniles here. So we should mention Gibbs Island, who was quite an impressive winner at Haydock.
Gibbs Island was an impressive winner at Haydock, and I imagine he'd head to the try if he couldn't do any more than he was asked. But yeah, he did win well.
Okay. Same day that Constitution Hill galloped, the 2 juveniles, leading juveniles from Nicky Henderson's yard also did so. Lulamba with Nico de Boinville on board, Palladium with James Bowen on board. Of course, since this, James Bowen was banned by the Whip Review Committee for 7 days. He's announced today that he's appealing against both that finding and the length of the penalty. At the moment, he'll be banned from the Tuesday of Cheltenham to the Monday after. And that's because he's got a 2-day ban from the careless riding in the race. So he's having to appeal that if he's going to get to ride at Cheltenham with such significant rides as this. I asked about the strike rest of success on appeals. 2 years of the Whip Review Committee, 2023 and 2024, 33% in that time have been successful in full, 44% if you include successful in part, i.e. a reduction. But all 3 of the last appeals have been upheld by the panel. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens, and that you'd imagine it'll be heard next week. Sometime, well, it has to be next week, doesn't it?
But when you're in a corner, what else can you do but appeal?
Yeah.
There's no choice, he has to.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a sickener.
Yeah. OK. We've got a new favourite for the bumper as well. You and Gary dealt with the bumpers last week. Thank you very much.
At Punchestown, absolutely hosed up. We won a point in November time, bolted up in the Tisdale colours under Patrick Mullins, and he will head to Cheltenham where Coco Cabana will go with him. And I haven't jumped ship, Lydia. I'm still with Coco Cabana. Are
you? Yeah. Interesting. OK. So this is a half-brother of the Clukey Kid winning there impressively. A couple of horses that they definitely won't be seeing at the festival, sadly, from Willie Mullins' yard are Cowabunga. No turners for him. He misses the rest of the season. That's a setback, an informative message from Frank Perry. And then we've got Storm Heart, who wasn't entered in the county hurdle. So we won't be seeing him. Also, Nicky Henderson has mentioned that Jinko Blue, who unseated his rider Nico de Boinville in the Reynoldstown, he's been since schooled and he's not really in the right frame of mind for Cheltenham, so he won't be going there. Meanwhile, this is the time where we get sort of plans coalescing a little bit, and it sounds as though Noel George is leaning towards the Ryanair with Il est Français.
Yeah, and he said he'd decide next week, but was it next week? I think it was.
Yes.
Look, I suppose when you go this close in the King George, just dropping down a couple of furlongs, look, the most logical thing to do, it probably does. And look, he's an addition to the Ryanair, he'd be an addition to the Champion Chase. It's great to have him at the festival, Lydia, so roll on wherever he goes.
He says that the weather would be a big factor. Surely another factor is Matata and Solness in the race, the Champion Chase.
Yeah, maybe, but that's you're assuming he has to front run. I just think a really strong gallop suits him. So if Matata and Solness dragged him, the way he jumps, I wouldn't be surprised if he was going by them with the water jump anyway.
Okay, and potentially good news, and I'm really pleased. Let's fingers crossed that this actually happens. But Jack Kennedy hasn't ruled out being able to ride at the Cheltenham Festival. He's back riding out at home after his 6th leg break. He fractured a lower tibia at the end of November. He's seeing his specialist, Dr. Paddy Kenny, next week, and the specialist hasn't ruled out Cheltenham either.
Well, I hope he gets there. I went there 1 year, Lydia, having had a ride at Sandown, and then a great first day, so I hope he makes it.
I was going to ask, had you had a similar experience? I suspected you would have done.
I've had more than one.
Yeah. Right, OK, that is a quick fire news roundup. In a few moments' time, we're going to be joined by our special guest.
Cabana is obviously Blue Brezel. He's a store horse, so he's been in the yard all winter. Big and backward. Like when I first saw him work, I thought this is going to be a long haul with this fella. But every week he got a bit sharper. He's very laid back. He only does exactly what you ask him when you ask him, to the degree you ask him. So we went to Navan with him because we wanted a track which wasn't, not like a Punchestown where you turn in and you have to pick up and go. Navan is a 3 furlong straight. And you can see all the way down the straight, every time I hit my slap down his shoulder, he's coming on it and I'm able to sit. And then once I've gone from and I'm hit 1 or 2 behind the saddle. You know, he's flown, and that looked a bumper with a lot of depth in it. So I was very taken with that performance.
Keep up to date with all the latest news via the Racing TV social media channels. Our X, Facebook and YouTube channels will keep you up to speed with race replays, interviews and plenty more bonus content. Engage with other users to discuss the key talking points in the sport, enter competitions, get expert tipping insight and catch up on breaking news from the Racing TV website. Let our Instagram and TikTok channels bring you closer to the action with a range of immersive, engaging and educational content. Racing TV's social media channels already have over 1 million followers as we aim to give you access to the action at your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, you can stay ahead of the pack by following us on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube and Threads. Join us now by following Racing TV on social media today.
So as I mentioned, the weights for the Cheltenham Festival were unveiled earlier this week, and so this show is very much dedicated to the handicaps over the 4 days of the festival. And if you're watching this time last year, you might suspect who our special guest is. I'm delighted to say that Matt Toombs is joining us, and he is going to be talking about trends in the handicaps and your insight to it. I think of you as a sort of intelligent, applied trends. You're not sort of blinded by the light of trends, are you?
Flattery will get you everywhere.
I hope so.
Yeah, that is important because trends are a Marmite subject, and the important thing is to start with a theory, ideally from watching lots of renewals of a race, and then go and research the stats. There's a cart and horse element to this. You're also, as a punter, not just looking for positive factors as you might be as a race planner, you're looking for underbet factors.
Yes.
So to take a race that the market doesn't understand very well, like the Albert Bartlett, every year punters get sucked into backing horses with flashy form at 2.5 miles, they don't get home. They tend to look at the graded races over 3 miles over the winter and dismiss the horses as slow old boats, not good enough. And so when you then go and research the stats, Grade 1 winners at 2.5 miles, 1 from 14, 83% loss. Graded winners at 2 miles 7 or further, 7 from 56, 75% profit.
I like the fact you've given us a bonus race. You know, this is all about handicaps, and we've got the Albert Bartlett as well.
And the winner is, so we have to go and do the homework as well.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about that is you don't try and get the winner now. Because of the big prices, they tend to be defensively priced anti-post. So it's definitely a race to be betting on the day.
Perfect.
This is a bit different from 12 months ago, of course, because we have more handicaps at this year's festival, and we also have different qualifying conditions for the other handicaps as well. So it's going to be a bit different.
It is, and it'll probably have a bit of an impact in the handicap chases as well about the numbers in the races, which ones fill, which ones won't, because we've got 3 extra handicap chases if you count the cross-country.
OK, so we're going to go through it race by race, and we're going to do it chronologically as well, but we're starting with the chases before moving to the hurdlers. So obviously the place to start is the Ultima, the 3-mile handicap chase on day 1 of the Cheltenham Festival. Those are Paddy Power non-runner, no bet prices, and you'll see at the bottom as well, Matt has helpfully provided the number of entries previously, and you'll see that the entries there are markedly down, 47 this time around, compared with 76 and 63 the last 2 years. And the last twice, Matt, everything's got in, and you would expect, given that we've got a smaller entry, that you needn't be worried about making the cut for the Ultima.
Definitely.
Yeah, OK. So your theory on the Ultima is?
The theory is concerned with horses who are rated lower than their hurdles mark. Often that's because they're not as good over fences, but clearly if you can find a runner that is, you've got a well-handicapped horse. Where that's happened in the past has been horses like Pertemps 2, Holywell, Wichita Lyman, high-class hurdlers have been novice chasing, haven't had the opportunity to run to a high mark. Here we've got something slightly different with Gold Tweet. He won the Cleve hurdle a couple of years ago. Got 1.56 for that. That was on ground that the time said was good to soft, so probably adaptable. And he's been running mainly over fences since then, mainly in France, had one run in Britain at the Betfair Chase. Ironically, had he not run in that, he'd be lobbed in here off 138, but he did. And he took to the British fences well, travelled really strongly into the race, but as is so often in the Betfair Chase, it turned into a really attritional slog and he didn't get home. He was beaten 18 lengths by a 163 horse in Royal Pagaille. So in theory, he'd be about 145 from that. You have to be a bit careful with French horses at that time of year. He'd had a couple of runs with the structure of the French programme, but that would have been Royal Pagaille's Gold Cup. Dan Skelton, I think, would have had Grey Dawning pretty fit with the Trainers' Championship in mind, so maybe you can trust that form. So he's actually been given a rating of 151. What the handicapper has done is blended his theoretical 145 rating with his 156 hurdles rating, put it for both in the middle. So he could be £5 or £6 well in, he could be £5 or £6 badly in. But the way he travelled into a good race in the Betfair Chase, it might be that he's well handicapped here.
He was there with every chance, Ruby, until 3 out.
He was, and without the run, he'd be really well handicapped. It's interesting how that French form got blended. Other French form didn't, but yeah. We'll move swiftly on from that one. But look, it is... Trends work. There's a wide open race. I thought Broadway Boy. I just think he's the right age profile for me. 6 Rising 7, brilliant run in the Coral Gold Cup earlier in the year. Johnny Who sticks out. Happy Go Lucky right down in the weights. Has dropped considerably now, trained by Mel Rowley, of course. And the other way of looking at it is what is getting penalties to get in, needing the 5th run, and that is Cantate Dory.
Yes. Tell me about what you made of his Kempton run.
His Kempton run was bizarre to watch, I suppose. He starts off at the very back, dropped in before they get to not even halfway, but after jumping 6 fences and turns into the home straight. He's gone from stone last up on the outside to 4th, and by the time he got to halfway, he was upsides in front. It was a good performance from him, but this was his 5th run. He needed a 5th run to qualify, but it was a big pot race. It was worth 100,000, and he's gone and collected, stretched away early down the back, and has absolutely routed his rivals down the home straight to get himself an impressive rise. Which probably £12, is that going to be enough to stop him? If he does get in, he should get in, but the £12 on his 5th run could be expensive.
15 lengths back to Highland in second, who heads straight to entry for the National. What did you make of Cantate Dory, Matt?
Oh, he was hugely impressive on the day. The problem, as Ruby said, is he's now got a big penalty. That is a big hike to take in a race that's competitive, but he was very good with it.
And he got paid for it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
it's a bigger pot, isn't it?
Yeah, by about 1,000 for the winner. Yeah, so I mean, it's understandable that you would target that. Yeah, we're all putting up a tip for a handicap tip for the festival at the end of the show, and mine is in this race, but I'm not gonna spoil that. Let's move on, shall we?
What we do know is we won't do worse than we did last year.
Well, there is that. Shall we all confess what happened last year?
Well, mine came last.
Mine didn't run.
I went for a pacemaker.
The only way is up.
Stay tuned to the end. Right, let's move on to the National Handicap Chase. And of course, this is now a handicap, and so we've put the weights next to these horses. Now is the Hour has been favourite, now at 3-1, since running eye-catchingly at Navan last time out. Haiti Couleur 7-2, Transmission Captain Cody 7-1, 8-1, and upwards the rest. Now clearly there's a lack of trends here because we're dealing with a new circumstance, Matt.
Yeah, so rather than look at a specific race trends, a more general trend around penalties, and looking where a penalty has got to get into a race in particular. So the stats are, if horses that are run under a penalty, 6 from 83 this century, small 20% profit. If you try and look at the ones that needed the penalty to get in, inevitably subjectivity and a bit of soft data, the way I cut it, 4 from 46, 93% profit. And particularly if you see a trainer doing something out of character. I remember Nicky Henderson running Call the Cops 12 days before the Pertemps Final at Doncaster. Very unlike Nicky. He was on 133, cut 135, got up to 138 with a penalty and he won. So definitely worth looking over the next few days at horses that are entered up who might need to get a penalty to get a run.
You have mentioned Transmission to us as a horse that you're particularly interested in here.
Partly because of the Neil Mulholland modus operandi. He ran in the Cleve Hurdle as his prep. The Druid's nephew did that before winning the Ultima. Nearly pulled it off with the Young Master the next year. So always encouraging to see a similar MO. Before that, he was second to Haiti Couleur in December at Cheltenham over 3 mile 1. Always looked as if he was going a yard quicker than he wanted there, both galloping and jumping, but finished like a train, as we can see here. He looked like the step up in trip might really suit him, and he's off 133. He's number 18, so he's guaranteed a run, and he could be well handicapped up in trip.
OK. Now, there's a couple of horses here, Ruby, that we're very interested in because we've already spoken about it earlier in the series.
Yeah, it was a novice chase at Navan, won by 3-car Bragg, and now is the hour, and Captain Cody both caught the eye on this occasion. Loch Lane on the right, Cantor Calanisi in the quarters in the middle gets involved as well. 3-car Bragg, loads of experience and a decent horse was in front. Nobody seemed to be in a rush to take him on, and as they got to the second last, there was plenty still on the bridle, but 3-car Bragg repels them. Now is the hour, did catch the eye. Captain Cody was flat to the boards at this stage, but he really gets running from the back of the last home. They couldn't get to 3-car Bragg, but I think both threw their hats into the ring for this race, Lydia, and it was interesting to see that both entered, both near the top of the market, and with no trends, either or is as good a guess for me.
I think that the trip is going to suit both of them. They were talking Irish National initially for Captain Cody, but here he is for the National Hunt Chase.
He's in here now, and if he takes his chance, you'd imagine he'd run a good race. He only has one negative for a handicap chase in Cheltenham.
Willie Mullins. Bizarre thing to say.
0 from 47.
Yeah. In
That is a
handicap
trend.
chases. Surely with these new novice handicap chases, that is going to change. Well, maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. Let's
There
see.
was a novice handicap chase before.
No, that's true. True that. Which we will talk about in a few moments' time. But first, the cross country. And again, this is slightly different to previously because now it is a limited handicap chase. Stumptown is the 2-1 favourite, Galvan 11-2, 15-2 and upwards the rest. You want to make the point, Matt, about limited impact actually to this change?
In terms of being a handicap, yes, and I think that's because of the nature of the track. It's different to, say, Punchestown, where the Banks course predated the conventional tracks. This had to be shoehorned in the 90s, and it's a very sharp, tight track, virtually no opportunities to gallop until the business end. So what you need is a horse that can stay on an even keel, cope with the obstacles, and then sprint. And therefore, because they've gone so slowly, it's much easier to give the weight away.
Absolutely. And you have zeroed in on Galvan.
Yes, and the trend around that is that the last 5 winners, had this been run as a £20 handicap, would still have won anyway. So if you then add on my theory that it's easier to give the weight away, you want to be with the class horses. And I've been looking all season to see which trainers cotton on to this and keep running the X-Grade 1 horses and which decide, oh no, it's a handicap, there's no point running them. As you might expect, Gordon Elliott very much on the ball with this. Galvin's got 154. He hasn't run since the autumn in America, good run there. He won the National Hunt Chase off a similar break, so he goes well fresh. You know he's still in form, 4th in the National last year. Some of the other X-Grade 1 horses, like Conflated and Fakir Duderi, may be on the downgrade. He still looks a good horse. He is a bit ground dependent, so weather watch should be important here. But if it does dry out and there's any sort of good to soft in the description, I think he'll take a lot of beating here.
And this would be his 6th festival appearance. You like another past Cheltenham Festival winner?
I do, but Fakir Dudari and Bustleton both caught my eye in cross-country races earlier in the season as horses who could prosper come the springtime. But I do like Vanilla. I thought he was brilliant at Punchestown on his last start. Jumping was always Vanilla's Achilles heel. At the big double at the bottom of Punchestown, he was magnificent. Now he does peck at the back of this drop bank on the way home, or drop hedge on the way home, but he goes to the next one, which is a laurel hedge, quite like Punchestown or Cheltenham even. He pings it very good. Then at the last fence, he was good at the last bank as well, and I just think he's romped in. I think he's been given half a chance by the handicapper. He was second in the Grand National off a mark of 147. That's what he's on again. And yeah, I like him against his stable companion Stumptown.
Okay. Matt, by the way, is anticipating a cut-off of 130 in terms of that limited handicap. Let's move on to the Grand Annual, shall we? Which is over 2 miles.
Before we go, Stumptown will run an 11.10. 10.5 will be the bottom weight. So as 130 might be the cut-off, they will be out of the handicap.
Right. Okay. Moving on to the Grand Annual, which is one of my favourite handicaps of the season. Liberty Hunter, the 7-1 favourite here. And again, there's the number of entries at the bottom and the mark anticipated to get a cut, to make the cuts. And 132 is where Matt was thinking this time around. Now, the Grand Annual, there is a strong trend here.
There is a long-standing trend, and that's the last 20 horses running off the same or a lower mark. They began the season 9 from 132, 38% profit. It's a proper old-fashioned plot race, and that was even before the BHA changed the handicapping in the summer of 2021, dropping horses quicker, and that's good to give all horses a more equal chance, but it does help plot horses up at the same time. I've done a piece on this that's on the Racing TV website about how well dropped horses have done in the last 3 years. The tricky bit is which horses have gone and which are being plotted up. One who's interesting, a third-time lucky, who's down to 134, £11 this season, 19 from his peak mark. He was bought by Sally Randall at the Mike Newbold disposal sale, 190 grand. They said that the whole target was to bring him back to the Cheltenham Festival. He was 11 lengths fourth or £15 higher 2 years ago. He'd been a bit of a short finisher for Dan Skelton and been held up accordingly to get home. I had him down as the sort of horse, as he matured, who might then get the trip better and win a big handicap. And it was eye-catching last time that he was ridden much more aggressively up the front. We all know in an old course Grand Annual, very much an advantage to be prominently ridden. So he's had the try of that now. Question is, has he gone, or like Global Citizen, who was down £15 in this 3 years ago, is he now handicapped to win?
I was just about to ask Ruby that question, your view on third time lucky.
I think he showed enough on his comeback run in my mind. He showed a bit of spark. I wouldn't think he is gone yet. There's probably a bigger question mark over Editor de Geet, who has fallen £20 in his last 5 starts to a mark that sticks out like a sore thumb of 140 if he could ever regain his mojo. But I think he's a bigger question mark to answer than third time lucky.
I agree.
Yeah, he showed quite a bit behind Matata at the start of the season. Right, OK, those are the handicap chases from day 1 and day 2 at Cheltenham. We'll be back in a moment with day 3 and 4.
Ahead of the 2025 Cheltenham Festival, the Racing TV team have been hitting the roads around the UK and Ireland. Find out what Gordon Elliott, Nicky Henderson, Willie Mullins, Henry de Bromhead, Emmett Mullins and more have had to say about their Cheltenham Festival contenders in their own words by heading to the on-demand section of racingtv.com or Racing TV's YouTube page.
And we start day 3 with a new style handicap chase, and that is the Jack Richards. Let's take a look at the betting for that. A Grade 2 limited handicap for which Jaguar is the 4-to-1 favourite. And there have been different iterations of this Golden Miller. It's been a Grade 1 recently, but prior to that, it has also been a handicap.
Yeah, and we're back to the 2005 to 2010 iteration. No rating ceiling, £20 limited handicap on the new course.
Yeah, so can we take anything from that now, or are we talking about a different scene?
I think so, in the sense that the last few renewals of this as a handicap had a very compressed handicap. And I imagine the fact whether it was a £20 or £26 handicap probably wouldn't make too much difference.
So what do you make of the favourite Jaguar? Is this a race where we should be siding with horses like this?
And that's an important point. With handicaps in particular, you want to be looking at which part of the market the winners are coming from. Some races have a very strong basis for the favourites going well. I think a lot of punters look at this race and say 20, now 22 novices running in a handicap. That will be a lottery. But it hasn't been. It's actually been the most predictable handicap at the festival. Average SP just over 9-1, 3 points shorter than any of the others. So Jaguar, I think, is a good favourite. He won the novice handicap on trials day. It's produced 4 of the last 8 winners. Good trial, looks strong form. We'll discuss some of the other horses from that later. He is up £7 to 139. But this is a race where if you back the front 5 in the SP market in this race, you'd have made a 45% profit. So even though he looks a short price, it doesn't mean he's not good value.
OK, he's also a favourite for the plate Jaguar and has much improved horse over fences as compared to hurdles. Cribilli next in at 7-1, then Springwell Bay, for whom there's notes that he might go to the Arkle, isn't there? Is that?
There's been some yak about that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, OK, so I should say that for the Jack Richards, Matt's anticipated maybe a cut-off of 134, whereas really with the plate everything gets in.
I think so, yeah.
So there is a key run style factor here that you have to bear in mind for the plate.
Absolutely, yeah. You want to be up the front. The last 6 winners have been ridden right close to the Shake 'em Up Harry was about 2-3 lengths behind, and that's the furthest back any of those have been. Sierra de Luck and Cool Cody made all the running, more or less.
Okay, well, let's take a look at them. We can look at them back to back and back just to underline the point that Shake 'em Up Harry that you see here is always prominent. Ditto Seddon, the previous year. Both of those are entered in the race this time around as well. And there is Seddon, now a 12-year-old. Shake 'em Up Harry's 11, who's a bit older than I realised. And then, of course, Cool Cody, good old Cool Cody, who won it in 2022. So bearing that in mind, Matt, who were you looking at? Who are you eyeing in this race?
Well, because there's a similar handicap at every Cheltenham meeting, you tend to get course and distance specialists in this in a way you don't in the other handicaps. Gemiron won the December Gold Cup of 136, again making a fair bit of the running. He ran poorly on his next start when Venetia's horses were going through a bit of a cold spell. Then he was dropped out last time, down a couple of pounds for that, so only £6 above his winning mark from December. If he reverts to the positive tactics, then he could give Venetia another winner in this. She's had 3 already. Carrickhill Boy made all the running. The other 2 were prominently ridden. So I think he's still well handicapped to run well in a specialist race.
What's your take, Ruby?
I think San Salvador, whichever one of the last 3 handicaps you mentioned, he turns up in when you go through Jordan's, is extremely well handicapped. I think when you go through Touch Me Not, Facile Mode of Tom Mullins is really well handicapped in one of the earlier races. And I think in this race, Genie's Destiny has fallen enough. Likes to jump out and go one off 147 at Trialsdale last year, was placed in at the festival, and I just think he has come down to a mark of 149, and he likes to be on the pace.
He does, and Paul's horses are running a bit better now, aren't they?
Yes.
I have a plea to Alan King. Masaccio has got 3 entries at the Cheltenham Festival. The Ultima, I don't think he stays 3 miles. The Jack Richards, and this race, for which his run style will be really good. This would be the good race for Masaccio to win in. Anyway, that's just a personal, heartfelt plea. Let's move on to the Footwarn Kim Muir handicap chase, shall we? Summer Jest, now is the hour, 7-1 joint favourite. Yes, the same now is the hour that is favourite for the National Hunt Chase, and it's 8-1 and upwards the rest. Again, this is a race where everything gets the run. Now, expectations about novices. We discussed this race earlier in the series, Ruby and I. Novices needing an extra run. Is it going to have any impact here? Would it have had impact in the past?
Less so in this race than other races, I think. If you'd had these rules all the time this century, 19 Festival Handicap winners wouldn't have been eligible, but only 1 in this race, Mount Ida. Because of the nature of it, virtually the whole Gold Cup trip, they tend to have had a little bit more experience anyway. So I think this is a race where the last 6 winners were novices, and I think they're going to continue to do well. You were suspecting that would be the case at the start of the series?
Yeah, we kind of thought that, but look, it is competitive, and again, it's hard to know where will the cut-off be, even what's going to be top weight in it is a bit difficult to figure out. Sam Majess won at Fairyhouse the last year. He was lucky. Affadale Fury made a bad mistake at the last and he ended up winning. I thought one way down Lydia was unlucky at Doncaster. He's gotten a few pounds for it, but that was walking on air. I thought if he's down now at number 47, if he was to get in, he'd have a squeak. 129 beyond the age, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think everything that wants to run will get in, so I think you would get in with him, and he was running a fantastic race there, certainly.
What was your way into this race, Matt?
Well, normally it's jockey bookings, so everyone wants, someone like Derek O'Connor on, but that gets priced in very quickly. What you should actually be looking at is what pros been running, what amateurs are going to be riding now, and what's the difference. And if you have a horse that's already been ridden by the amateur, then that can be an advantage, and also in terms of the amateur is going to know the horse well. Finny Maguire rode 9 Graces a couple of times in bumpers, been on the last 2 times over fences. She stepped back up to 2 mile 6 last time, jumped better, looked to improve, looked as if she would improve again for another step up in trip. She's a half-sister to Special Acceptance, who was second in the Sussex National. So she has got a tougher task here off 133, but her jockey knows her well and she looks progressive.
OK. And Ruby, you also have... Well, first of all, what did you think of 9 Graces?
As a squeak. Squeak is all. Daily President maybe has a chance too. Was fifth in last year's race. He was in the background in that shot. And the other one, you could make a case for, is the grey horse of Ollie Murphy.
Resplendent Grey.
Resplendent Grey. I'm not sure which race he's going to run in, but I do think 3¼ miles would suit him. He may well. He's in a couple of entries. He's just a sticky jumper, but I think his form is pretty strong, even through Highland earlier in the year. A mistake at the second last, and he ran on well behind Highland. He then went to Sandown after that. Again, a bit sticky jumping wise, but 3¼ miles in the Kim Muir, you get time to warm up and get into a race, and it might suit Resplendent Grey.
That's the Jaguar race that we mentioned. But I felt on the day that race had a lot of strength in depth to it.
Yes, and it tends to have as well, so you can take even more positivity from the history of that race, I think.
OK. Right, so those are Matt and Ruby's thoughts about the handicap chases. In a few moments' time, we'll be talking about the handicap hurdles.
Cabana's obviously Blue Brezel. He's a store horse, so he's been in the yard all winter. Big and backward. Like when I first saw him work, I thought it's going to be a long haul with this fella. But every week he got a bit sharper. He's very laid back. He only does exactly what you ask him when you ask him, to the degree you ask him. So we went to Nav with him because we wanted a track which wasn't, not like a punchdown where you turn in and you have to pick up and go. Navan is a 3 furlong straight. And you can see all the way down the straight, every time I hit my slap down his shoulder, he's coming on it, and I'm able to sit. And then once I've gone for him and I'm hitting 1 or 2 behind the saddle, he's flown. And that looked a bumper with a lot of depth in it. So I was very taken with that performance.
So same routine, we're going through the handicap hurdles and we're going through chronologically over the 4 days. So therefore we start with the Fred Winter Juvenile Handicap Hurdle over 2 miles, and we can take a look at the betting for that, for which Stencil French Raider is the 9-2 favourite. And you can have a look at the number of entries there at the bottom and the cut-off that has tended to be needed to get a run. You're pitching it at about 1-2-1 potentially, Matt. So I suppose with juveniles, you've got to work out, do you like experience in a big, bustly field like this? But if you've got the experience, do you show the handicapper what you've got? And
that's exactly it. And what punters tend to do is they look at the number of races they have they run in a big field ever? The other thing is time. Horses learn over time, they learn at home in between races. And with the French 3-year-old season just starting now, quite a lot of these horses have been hurdling for a long time. That can be a big advantage. The trend is that horses that have run over hurdles by the end of September, 6 from 90, 96% profit. And one of those that's still in France is Stencil, the favourite. He ran 3 times starting in May there, then came over for the finesse, where he was no match for East India Dock, beaten by 10 lengths, but he was 18 lengths clear of the others. And sometimes when you've got an outstanding novice or juvenile, the horse that's chasing them home gets underrated, the sort of Duvan sizing John type phenomenon. So one good punting angle can be related contingency accumulators. If you think one particular strain of novice form is very strong, and East India Dock in the Triumph and Stencil in the Fred Winter could be a related contingency double this year. There was a couple of those last season, weren't there, at Cheltenham? Yeah, it was the Navan Novice Hurdle and the Brave Inca. And so you had Slade Steel, you had Ballyburn, Absurd, Stellar Story and Better Days Ahead, all came out of those 2 races. What do you think of Stencil? I think he's a chance. Big light horse at the paddock in Cheltenham. Look at him on the day anyway. I'm not sure. I think maybe last year the handicappers underestimated the juveniles, and I think they haven't missed them this year, but time will tell. Yeah. Of course, a couple of trainers from Ireland have a very strong record in this race. Between them, Joseph O'Brien and Gordon Elliott have won 5 of the last 7 editions of the Fred Winter. But Wendrock is probably the chief representative potentially for Gordon Elliott, but he said at the start of the season that he didn't think his juveniles were strong. No, absolutely, whereas Joseph seems to have a lot of good young juveniles and won it last year again with Lark in the Morning, so he'd be more one of those 2 I'll be focusing on, I think. Yes, Gordon's won it with Jazzy Matty, Aramax, Veneer of Charm, and of course Joseph O'Brien with Lark in the Morning and Band of Outlaws. He's got 4 entries at this stage. You had a good look at a couple of them. The first of them is Put Your Hands Together. Yeah, Put Your Hands Together is a nice individual. Won well on its last start. Put Your Hands Together. Well, got up close home on its last start at Ferryhouse. Dug in. Didn't look likely, but eventually
I'm looking at the wrong video. I thought Put Your Hands Together won the last time, but anyway. Didn't get Put Your Hands Together, but I actually preferred the other one, which was Beyond Your Dreams.
Yes, now talk me through this. This is the Navan, again a horse that finished second, this time behind Total Look, with Wendrock behind making his hurdling debut.
Yeah, but if you look at Wendrock in the Jigginstown colours, obviously, he's going to run in the Fred Winter, or not in the Fred Winter, with a mark of 136. Total Look is just on the outside. He's up in the 132, and on the inside is Beyond Your Dreams. And it looks like getting tight going to the last mark. Walsh pulls back, steadies up, jumps the last hurdle, takes Beyond Your Dreams a little while to get going. But she's only going to have 10.9 on her back off a mark of 123, and I think she could be pretty well in here versus the two either side of her, Total Look and Wendrock. I'd like her. I think maybe a pair of cheek pieces might help her too.
Interesting. What was your take on those two?
She is definitely the one out of that race, yeah. Okay. She does look like a bit of a plot job.
She does. It would be remiss of me if I didn't ask you about Mercia, because she just failed to beat Bacchanalian when they met each other, and the Bacchanalian has obviously since franked the form.
She has. Mercia's a 136 though. Lady Veggie Allen, Sonny Bill, both 136s. I would have thought were better than Mercia at home, unless you got really quick ground. Mercia does want really dry ground, so maybe she's been running well on ground that wouldn't suit her, but I think the other fillies are better. And I think with their marks, Lydia, I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up in the Triumph.
Yeah, it's that Nace race, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good supply chain traditionally for the Fred Winter. That's why everyone's looking at Mercia. Right, let's move on to the Coral Cup, shall we? Kopek Demi. Oh. This is the first of many times that we're going to be mentioning Kopek Demi. He'll be making his British/Irish debut, for an Irish stable in Britain, having only raced in France previously. He's 5-1 favourite for the Coral Cup, amongst other races. What's your theory in terms of the Coral Cup, Matt?
Well, we talk about a lot of races where the novices do well. This is not one of them. This first run in 1993, first season hurdlers 0 from 59, novices 1 from 132. No open grade 1 at a similar trip. So you get high-class horses running in this. And I also think there's a bit of a prejudice against form at around 2.5 miles. Horses sometimes get rated a bit lower than they would for winning good races at 2 and 3 miles. So in the Martin Pipe, that's where a lot of the good young novices that are unexposed tend to go. With the 145 ceiling, they don't have to take on these classy types. Mm-hmm. So what that leads to is 10 of the last 16 winners from the top 8 in the weights, 6 of the last 12 winning off 148 or more. So don't be afraid of one near the top of the weights here. And
so you were looking at?
Maxim. So Gordon Elliott won this 3 years ago with Commander of Fleet off 152 at 50-1. He finished third in the Boyne Hurdle. Maxim won the Boyne Hurdle this year. He's off a mark of 153. He's not a sexy sort, but he's the sort who Gordon produces well to run big prices in a race like this. And he's also got the right run style. Of the hurdle races, this is the best race for front runners. Heaven help us made all. 6 of the other last 14 were right up with the pace. And he's stays further, he's aggressively ridden. And although there'll be a lot of more unexposed horses than him in this, he's the sort who could go well at a price.
Yeah, I remember him running really progressively 2 seasons ago, finishing 14th at the Pertemps. He made a big, late, wide move, didn't he? And then everything just petered out. He got in the wrong position early by a mistake at the first. By the way, if you're looking at what might make the cut here, Matt's thinking 132 might be where it might come. But I mentioned Kopek Demi, and he's getting a lot of chat online as well. Liam King here is typical. He finds it interesting that he's been hammered in the betting, clearly showing something good at home, even more so now with the rating he's been given, which is 136. Plenty of choices where he runs. Will be much shorter on the day, whichever race he goes for. He's in the Coral Cup, the County, the Martin Pipe. What do you make of 136, Ruby?
I'd say 136, Lydia. It's explained as to how you get 136. It's double his French rating, and you end up at 136. But what do you make of it? I think myself and Matt were going through it outside before we came in. We went through Kitzbühel and we went through Karim Le Rouge. And if you did it literally through Karim Le Rouge, through Kitzbühel, you could get Kopek Demi to 162 in Ireland, which probably be 166 in the UK.
But he's not on that. He's on 136, and this is why.
How tricky did you find this horse to rate? Yeah, it's an interesting answer. It's probably the most tricky and also one of the most straightforward ones in that it's obviously not run in Britain or Ireland yet. It's had its 5 runs, so it qualifies for all those races. All those races run in France, so It's rated 68 kilo in France. And our current sort of BHA policy with the horse that are imported into this country is a ×2 of the French rating. So that's where the 136 comes from. Obviously, you wouldn't like to see them run over here to sort of get a bit of a handle on what that level is worth, but it's not run since May, so it's kind of straightforward that it is what it is. It has to be 136, but obviously it's an unknown of if that level is sort of correct or not at the moment.
So I'm taking from this, I don't know how you are, that Michael's told us what the BHA policy is, and I could almost feel his squeaky discomfort with what that number turns out to be. What do you think?
Exactly that. And it seems an anomaly that the British handicapper does reassess the Irish horses every year and isn't reassessing the French horses.
Look, it suits us. I work in Willie Mullins's. I think it's wonderful we have a horse that has a mark of 136. I just think it's ridiculous that a handicapper has to handicap a horse. He clearly doesn't want that. I think that's madness.
The full interview done by the Racing TV digital team will be online on YouTube tomorrow. That is just an excerpt from it. Right, let's move on to the Pertemps, shall we? The Wool Park is the 9-2 favourite, who the connections keep saying that he's going to go for the Stayers Hurdle, which is his other entry, and he keeps shortening at the top of the market for this instead. 128 is the cut-off mark that Matt is suggesting you'll make it into the Pertemps, and we ought to talk about what impact the rule change has had here, finishing in the first four, and there's also a win and you're in element provided you're in the handicap proper.
Yeah, as you say, win and you're sort of in. So we've had 2 years of the 4 qualifiers. The first year, no horses were balloted out, so it wasn't in point. Last year, 3 winners were balloted out. Shallow River would have been dead in on 10-2. He'd have got a run, the other 2 wouldn't. This year, Catch Him Derry is guaranteed a run because he's going to be in the handicap proper. American Sniper will get a run if the Wool Park doesn't run. So it'll have an occasional relevance for the odd runner, but it's not going to make a big difference to the race.
OK, you're looking at Patter Merchant.
I am, and novices have a bad record in this in terms of not winning it very often for a slightly different reason. It's hard for first-season hurdlers in particular to get into this race. In Britain, the novices have to have run 4 times to run in a qualifier. In Ireland, they have to run 3 times. And in Ireland, there are only 3 qualifiers, 2 before the turn of the year. So it's quite hard to actually campaign a horse to get through that. But if they do, they're often up against quite a lot of exposed horses in this. So the trend is, first-season hurdlers trained in Ireland, only 8 have run this century, but 4 have won. And 3 are in here this year. Corey Starr will be interesting if he gets in, but he's number 36. That's only got him once in the last decade, so keep an eye out for him. The other pair qualified at Naas on Sunday. Will the Wise looked to have quite a hard race winning, and winners of qualifiers 2 from 113 this century. Patter Merchant finished 4th. He was interesting. He was a good bumper horse, beat Sounds Victorious, who finished 4th in the Cheltenham bumper last year. He's running 3 handicaps, been ridden pretty wide, had a good experience, and I think off a mark of 134, he's potentially a bit better than that based on his bumper form, certainly.
Yeah, steadily improving horse. But you like Car des Tourelles, who I only looked at today, and I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think 5-year-old. That last year's juvenile form, Lydia, is really, really strong. He's still unexposed. Was a bit keen in the qualifier at Punchestown early on, but I think when the business end of the race, he got plenty involved in it. Philip Fenton trains him. I just thought with 11 stone 1 on his mark of 139. He's up 6 from this qualifier. That's including the English, what do we call that? Interest for coming to England that an Irish horse gets. Tax. And yeah, I think he has a squeak.
OK. So that is Car des Tourelles and Patter Merchant. We're going to move on to the final day, and a race in which I have an absolutely abject record. It is the Vincent O'Brien County Handicap Hurdle. I don't think I've ever managed to find the winner. McClory is the 5-1 favourite. Absurd last year's winner is 6-1, along with Kopek de Mi. Virtually everything gets a run in this, according to Matt. Now, this is where you buck your trends. I like this.
Absolutely. If you are going to use trends or any other analytical tool, you've got to be prepared to look at a situation where they don't apply. Ruby's talked about how good last year's juveniles have done. You know, no horse have won the fighting 5th, apart from Sergino. Rocky's Diamond, the first one to win the Galmoy. Burdett Road won the Greatwood. They're the first 2 in the Galway Hurdle. So a really good cohort. And you'd imagine there are still 1 or 2 of them that are well handicapped, haven't shown their hand. The other part of this is it's been the hardest race at the festival, not just the handicaps, the hardest race to win from the front. I can't remember in my time any horse making all. The only one who got close was Tennis Cap, who got run down by Ted Veal on the flat. But even prominently ridden horses have a terrible record. The last who was really up with the pace was Sir Talbot 26 years ago. So Lark in the Morning won the Fred Winter last year off 1-2-2, being right out the back. Connection's really bullish on the run up to the race. Then the heavy ground, they thought he had no chance on that, and he still won. That form's worked out pretty well. I mentioned when the Derby Eagles Rain won the big race at the Stole for 4-year-olds. Harsh won at the at the Punchestown Festival. So Lark in the Morning, £10 higher on 132. But his hold-up style perfect for this, and especially if he gets the better ground that they seem to think he want. I think he could still be well handicapped.
Yeah, ran in snatches in a sharper test of the Swinton, but very much caught the eye at Leopardstown over Christmas. We've got a tweet from Rab Andrews here. Is Cargizi, he asked, the best treated of Willie Mullins's in the county? Has Dan Skelton worked his magic with the handicapper with Valgrand, or will any of that matter at all as Lark in the Morning just wins? Cargizi, Ruby.
Yeah, but I think there's a pile of them, Lydia. Ethical Diamond, Cargizi, Nadawi, Bunting, Cabral, the Matan, even a Paul Nichols's. There's a clatter of 5-year-olds in here, and purely on price right now, I'm going with Bunting because he's the longest of all of those.
OK, expand on that. He was 7th in the Triumph, of course.
Yeah, and he won a maiden hurdle at Limerick. I don't think he delivered what he could do at Cheltenham last year. I just thought he ran OK at Clonmel, and he fell at the top of the hill and he came home well. I think there's a good race in him. He's a huge price. I just think those 5-year-olds, I think one of them will win it, and purely because he's the biggest price of the 5 or 6 I've mentioned. I've gone with him. Cargiz, yes, race would suit her. She should settle well. Lark in the Morning could be a blot, but that is 40, 50 to 1.
Will she settle better? On toes, sweating in the paddock prior to the Wallfield?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, she definitely.
Yeah, OK. Bunting, by the way, I think 33 to 1 non-runner no bet, 50 to 1 if you fancy a go on anti-post terms. I'm going to enjoy watching that price tumble. Right, last race of this show, last race of the Cheltenham Festival. It is the Martin Pipe Handicap Hurdle. And so we've got a race again where virtually everything gets into this, and also Gigginstown has a strong record in the race. We'll have a look at it in a minute, but you're looking at the Enabler, aren't you, as a potential horse for this race?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was another good bumper horse last year. He won the Navan Future Champions bumper that Gordon often runs his best young horse in, Don Cossack, Envoy Len, Sam Crow, and so on. I think Gordon had Grade 1 aspirations for him at the start of the season, but the first day at Galway, he went sideways left, looked very green, finished lame the second time. Since then, he's had a bit of a look of a handicap project, I think. And as you say, Gigginstown by exactly the right source for this. The conditionals tend to go pretty quickly, real test of stamina at the trip. A lot of embryonic Grade 1 3-milers have come out of this, and I think he might be another one.
OK, and also 6 entries at the Cheltenham Festival, just to confuse, just to wrong foot you. Right, here are the horses for the Martin Pipe Conditional Jockeys Handicap Hurdle, the betting rather. Copictomy, him again, 130 favourite. Wadho is 6 to 1. Looks like she might be favoured for this race. And as I mentioned, virtually everything tends to get a run. Your thoughts on this race, Ruby?
Yeah, Hamsian, if everything's going to get a run. I was just looking at him earlier off down here at number 73 or wherever he was. Obviously, Voodoo, with the way the clatter form has gone from that race in Cheltenham, would be hugely of interest. Kopek to me, and I completely agree, the Enabler.
OK, right. I would advise you to have recorded this or watch it on replay because there's so much rich information that you have got from Matt. But I wouldn't blame you if you switched off already, bearing in mind what our... at this point, I mean, bearing in mind what our record with our tips were this time last year. We've told you already they were absolutely useless, so we're going to do it again. These are our thoughts then. So let's start with you. Oh, no, they're going to start with me, apparently. Right, OK. Whistle Stop Tour for me, as I mentioned in the Ultima. That horse finished 5th behind Jaguar in the Trials Day race over 2.5 miles. Had previously shaped as though a stayer. I think he's been back today for the Ultima, but he's still available about 14 to 1. I think he's a thorough stayer over 3 miles. Will appreciate the step back up in trip, and I think he'll benefit from the experience at Cheltenham. You next, Matt.
Feat of a Dancer in the Pertemps Final. Ran in the Leopardstown qualifier that 6 of the last 9 winners have come from. She was ridden with plenty of light there, pretty keen some of the time. got in the front in the straight, then just made a bit of a mess of the last and flattened out. And initially I was thinking, oh, does she really stay the 3 miles? Then I looked at Paul Nolan's horse, Mrs. Milner,
yes,
who won 4 years ago, watched her Leopardstown qualify, exactly the same thing happened. So I think she's a horse who's quite a bit better than our handicap mark, and hopefully she can at least do better than finish last, like Gabby's.
Well, I hope Whistle Stop Tour actually runs in the race that I wanted. Right, Ruby, yours.
I'm going for Beyond Your Dreams. I think she will just about get in the mark of 123, 10 stone 9 in the Fred Winter. I think I'd love to see a little bit of headgear on her. She got up close home to beat Slurricane in her next start, but all the horses around her, to me, she looks chucked in with all the horses she's run against, even Slurricane.
Okay. So that's the end of the show. As I said, it's worth watching this on repeat. Fount of information you are, Matt, and you do some regular columns for us as well on Racing TV.
Yeah, a couple up there. One about the record of novices and how that might pan out going forward, and also on the dropped horses that have had a really good record at the festival in recent years. Worth looking out for some of those that Handicap has given a chance.
OK, well, thank you so much for your company and your insight this evening. Thank you, as ever, Ruby. We will be back, not this time next week, but at 7:30 for our magazine show, extended pre-Cheltenham special. So make sure you join us then, 7:30 next week for Road to Cheltenham. In the meantime as well, next week you'll be able to pick up a couple editions of my column. Go racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham. But for that, from us tonight is good night.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.